Have you ever felt like you don't matter, even in a room full of people, like no one really sees the real you? Or maybe you grew up feeling invisible, quietly overlooked, and you didn't even know why? If that feels familiar, keep listening. This is for you. There's a certain kind of childhood people rarely talk about, a childhood that doesn't look dramatic from the outside. There was no obvious abuse, no shouting matches, no broken furniture, no visible wounds. You weren't the favorite child, but you also weren't the troublemaker. You weren't praised too much, but you also weren't punished too often. You were simply the child who existed quietly in the background. The child who didn't demand too much, didn't complain too loudly, didn't interrupt, didn't cause chaos. You were just there, the forgotten child, the quiet one, the easy one, the child everyone assumed was fine because you learned very early how to look fine. Not loud enough to be noticed, not needy enough to be prioritized, not problematic enough to worry anyone. And because you caused no disruptions, no one ever stopped to ask if you were okay. No one thought to check if silence meant strength or if it meant loneliness. But deep down, even as a child, you felt something missing. Not toys, not clothes, not privileges. Something far softer. The feeling of being seen, being heard, being held, being important enough for someone to pause their world and step into yours. That simple, quiet sense of I matter. And today, even as an adult, you still feel invisible sometimes without fully understanding why, because being forgotten in childhood doesn't feel like heartbreak in the moment. It feels like emptiness, a gentle, quiet kind of loneliness that settles inside you and stays there for years, sometimes for decades, until one day you realize that the thing you have been carrying isn't being independent, it's being emotionally overlooked. You didn't grow up being told you didn't matter. You just grew up never being shown that you did. And that kind of absence shapes you in ways that are almost invisible, in the way you shrink yourself to fit into people's lives, in the way you never want to bother anyone, in the way you feel guilty asking for help because you never learned how, in the way you believe your feelings are too heavy for others because no one ever carried them for you. Being the forgotten child doesn't show up as trauma scars. It shows up as hesitation, as quietness, as emotional minimalism, as the belief that your presence is optional, that your needs are negotiable, that your feelings are too quiet to matter. You became the person who takes care of everything alone, the person who apologizes for existing, the person who avoids taking up space because you never received any. And maybe you still don't understand why you feel invisible sometimes, even in a room full of people, even among friends, even with someone you love. But now you know, it didn't come from nowhere. It came from childhood moments where you learned to survive by being small, by staying quiet, by being easy, convenient, undemanding, independent long before you should have been. You didn't choose to be forgotten. You adapted to it. It doesn't happen overnight. Being the forgotten child isn't a single moment or a single event. It creeps in slowly, almost imperceptibly, through countless little moments that add up over time. A parent distracted by work or their own worries. A sibling who always seemed louder, more demanding, or more exciting. A question you asked that is brushed aside. A story you were bursting to tell, interrupted before it even left your lips. A small need you quietly swallowed because no one noticed, no one asked, no one offered. Each of these moments might have felt insignificant at the time, but one by one, they send the same quiet message. Your feelings are invisible. Your presence is optional. Your needs are negotiable. And your emotions, they don't take up space. Not because your family didn't care, not because they didn't love you, but because they never truly saw you. Not really. They didn't pause to notice the subtle tremor in your voice, the excitement in your eyes, the hurt behind your silence. And slowly, very slowly, this invisibility began to embed itself inside you. It became more than just a feeling, it became a way of surviving, a survival style. You learned to shrink, to blend in, to go unnoticed because it was safer. You learned that quiet endurance was easier than asking to be seen. And over time, this habit, this learned invisibility, became a part of who you are, shaping how you move through the world even today. When you grow up in a childhood where your needs are constantly unnoticed, your brain doesn't just sit there quietly, it learns. It adapts in ways designed to protect you, and what it teaches you becomes deeply ingrained. You learn things like don't bother anyone, don't raise your hand, don't ask for attention, don't make waves. You handle everything yourself because no one else seems to notice what you need. Your feelings, they are quietly pushed aside, convinced by repetition that they are not important, not valid, not worth mentioning. Stay small, stay quiet. Don't take up space. Don't be a burden. These aren't just rules, they are survival instincts your mind developed so you could navigate a world that seemed indifferent. And over time, this quiet adaptation becomes your default identity. You stop expecting support because historically, support never came. You stop asking for help because you learned that needing it only brings disappointment or rejection. You stop believing that your voice actually matters because the world has repeatedly shown you that it doesn't. You didn't choose invisibility. No child ever does. It wasn't a conscious decision. It was a role that life, circumstances, and the people around you assigned to you. And with every repeated moment of being overlooked, your young mind simply accepted it. You adapted, you survived, you became invisible because it was the path of least resistance, the way to stay safe, the way to keep peace. But here's the truth that adults rarely hear. Accepting invisibility didn't make you weak, it made you resilient, it made you capable of observing, adapting, and enduring. Yet now, as an adult, that same survival mechanism can hold you back, keeping you quiet in situations where your voice actually matters, keeping you small when you deserve to be seen, keeping you from asking for what you need in life. This is the silent psychology behind invisibility. It's subtle, powerful, and it shapes not just who you were as a child, but who you've become as an adult. And the first step to change is understanding that this invisibility was never your fault. You might not even realize it, but the patterns of your childhood follow you into your adult relationships. You struggle to express your needs even to the people who claim they love you. You shrink in conversations, careful not to be too loud, too demanding, too visible. You apologize for things you haven't done wrong, instinctively taking responsibility for discomfort that isn't yours. You avoid asking for help, even when you are drowning under the weight of responsibilities or emotions. You stay quiet in group conversations, letting others speak first, believing that your words don't matter as much as theirs. And even when people do care, even when someone does notice you, a part of you still feels replaceable, as if your presence is optional, as if you are never fully enough. You wait. You wait for someone to see you without you saying anything. You wait for acknowledgement, for love, for attention to arrive naturally, without realizing that adults rarely operate that way. Children expect to be noticed without asking because they believe love should be automatic. But adulthood doesn't work like that. And so the wound persists. Because a child inside you still believes, if they really care, they'll see me, that child, that part of you that learned to stay quiet, is still listening, still hoping, still aching for recognition. It's not weakness, it's a survival instinct that kept you safe once, but now it quietly limits your ability to fully show up in life. This is why you feel invisible, even when you are surrounded by people who love you, not because you are unworthy, but because your early experiences trained your mind to believe that being seen was dangerous or simply not important. And that lesson lingers quietly in the background of every relationship, every conversation, every interaction you have today. When you grow up feeling overlooked, feeling invisible, something quietly shifts inside you. You begin to overcompensate in ways that make the world notice you, but not by demanding attention for yourself. Instead, you give, you care, you show up for others in ways you never had for yourself. You listen more than you speak. You support more than you ask for support. You arrive before anyone calls for you. You give your time, your energy, your love. Sometimes, even when it drains you, you overextend, stretching yourself thin, making sure everyone else is okay, because you learned early on that being noticed came not from asking, but from giving. You become the person everyone relies on, the friend who never says no, the partner who always accommodates, the sibling who quietly fixes what others overlook. You know what it feels like to wait for someone to show up for you, so you make sure no one else ever feels that way. But beneath it all, deep down, you are exhausted. Not because helping others is wrong, not because giving is bad, but because a small, quiet part of you secretly wishes someone would show up for you in the same way. Someone would see your needs without you having to announce them. Someone would hold space for you without judgment. Someone would recognize your worth without you having to earn it through acts of service. This is the paradox of the forgotten child turned adult. You become indispensable to everyone else, but your own needs remain quietly ignored. You learn to survive by making yourself invisible, and now, even when you give everything, you are still waiting for your own presence to finally be acknowledged, for your voice to finally matter, for your inner child to finally feel seen. When someone finally tries to care for you, a part of you freezes. You don't quite know how to respond because for so long, care and attention were scarce. Your instinct is to push it away, to retreat. You say, "I'm fine," even when your body is screaming that you're not. You downplay your feelings, minimize your needs, and pretend you don't want or need anything at all. Not because you don't crave love, not because you don't deserve attention, but because love, in its pure form, feels unfamiliar. It feels strange and almost uncomfortable. Being seen, truly seen, feels wrong. Almost like by taking up that space, you are intruding, taking away from someone else. The part of you that learned to stay small is still very much alive, quietly questioning, am I allowed to exist fully? Am I allowed to be cared for? And yet, this discomfort doesn't mean you are incapable of love or unworthy of it. It simply means that your early experiences taught you to survive by keeping your emotions contained, by making yourself small, by not expecting anyone to meet you halfway. That part of you learned to protect itself from disappointment and neglect by closing off to care. And now, even as an adult, the habit remains. This is the painful irony of being the forgotten child. You give love so freely, but struggle to receive it. You support others with your whole heart, but when it comes to yourself, you hold back. You are learning slowly that it is safe to receive, that it is okay to take up space, that being cared for doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. Let's talk about the truth you never heard. You were never unimportant. You were never less deserving than anyone else. You were never meant to fade into the background or to be invisible. You were just a child in a home where other things were louder than your voice. A home where attention went to whoever demanded it the most, whoever cried the loudest, whoever made the biggest mistakes or caused the most trouble. And in that environment, your quietness wasn't noticed. But it wasn't because you didn't matter. It wasn't because you were unworthy of love or care. Your quietness wasn't your personality, it was your protection. A shield you developed so you could navigate a world where attention and acknowledgement were limited. It was a survival mechanism. It allowed you to stay safe, to stay unseen when being seen might have felt risky, overwhelming, or unsafe. And here's the truth. That survival strategy worked when you were a child. It kept you out of trouble. It kept you moving quietly through life. It helped you adapt. But as an adult, that same mechanism can make you feel overlooked, underappreciated, and invisible because your mind never unlearned the habit of shrinking to be safe. You weren't unimportant then, and you're not unimportant now. The child who learned to disappear to survive deserves to be seen, to be heard, to be valued. That quiet little part of you, the part that learned early on to protect itself, is still worthy of love, care, and recognition. How you begin to heal doesn't have to be dramatic. It starts with the smallest, quietest acts. Speak even when your voice shakes. Let the words leave your lips even if your heart is racing, even if it feels unfamiliar or uncomfortable. Every time you speak, you are practicing the truth that your voice matters. Ask for help, even if it feels foreign, even if the idea of relying on someone else makes your stomach tighten. Asking isn't weakness, it's learning to trust that others can hold space for you the way you've long held space for everyone else. Share your feelings, even if they feel too much. Emotions aren't burdens, they are signals of your inner world. Allow yourself to express them without judgment. Let your tears, your laughter, your anxiety, your joy, all of it exist without apology. Take up space without apologizing. You don't have to shrink to fit anyone else's comfort. You are allowed to exist fully, to fill a room with your presence, to claim your right to be seen. Let people show up for you. Let them carry some of the weight you've been carrying alone for so long. It doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. It teaches the child inside you that care can be given, that attention can be received, that love doesn't have to be earned through quiet endurance alone. And most importantly, let yourself be seen, not as the quiet, invisible child you once were, not as the adult who learned to disappear, but as the full, complex, deserving human you are today. Healing isn't about shouting or making grand gestures. It isn't about proving your worth to the world. Healing is about unlearning silence. It's about slowly dismantling the habit of hiding, and about practicing being seen, being heard, being recognized, and allowing yourself to finally exist without apology. Every small step matters. Every small act of self-recognition is a victory. And with each one, you remind that forgotten child inside you. I am here. I am worthy. I am allowed to take up space. If this video made you feel understood, if even one sentence felt like it was speaking directly to your experience, remember this: you are not invisible. You are not unimportant. You are not lacking. You are just unheard. And now, it's time to let yourself be seen, fully, gently, intentionally, to acknowledge your feelings, your presence, your worth, to finally give space to the part of you that learned to shrink so long ago. Thank you for being here, for taking the time to listen to yourself, for allowing this quiet reflection to reach the child inside you. Take a deep breath. Let it out slowly. and know that you are allowed to exist loudly now, to take up space, to speak, to be cared for, to be loved without conditions. If this video resonated with you, if it spoke to the parts of you no one ever asked about, subscribe to Z Mind. No pressure, just join this space where we explore, understand, and honor the unseen parts of ourselves, because you deserve to be understood fully, gently, and without apology.